Hi, so in this video we are exploring Esther Na's amazing track Rhythm Bouquet. In this track we have utilized Al Schmitt's plugins in different contexts. In the past two videos we added the Al Schmitt plugin to different sets of instruments: vocal, brass, upright bass, and strings. For this video we're going to explore how the Al Schmitt plugin works on the mix bus. Let's check it out. Something that I really like about this plugin is just how easy it is to use it. Leapwing Audio got Al Schmitt and picked on his brain, and basically they were like, okay Al, if you wanted to drop this plugin on your mix bus, what would you utilize? In the mind of Al Schmitt, he was thinking about whatever you can see in this image in here: trumpet, piano, like the conjunction of all of the previous instruments that we have worked on together, and then everything is routed into a submix where you're going to add this plugin. So this plugin, it's replicating all of the different processing elements that Al would have utilized in a context. Now, a lot of people would think that because there is a piano, a vocal, like violin in there, it means that it's only conceived for some of the music styles that Al would have or used to record and produce and mix. But technically you can drop this anywhere and it works really well. It's just a matter of understanding what it does. And again, this is not cheating. This is just letting your ears imagine and hear what it's doing and how it's affecting the signal. So let's go ahead and bypass and listen to what the song is doing without any mix bus processing. Okay, so there's a lot going on in here. So technically for a regular bus compressor, this would be a lot to handle because there is a busy drum section, there is a busy percussion section, there are vocal chops, there is a piano going on, there are strings, and there is a brass section doing a lot of things. So it is quite dynamic. So it would be difficult to handle and to calibrate. Luckily for us, the plugin will handle a lot of that load. So let's go ahead and just bypass it and see what it does. Without any changes, this is the default setting. So I can hear a little bit of that total harmonic distortion in the plugin already, remember, because this was the processing by Al Schmitt and it was modeled to it. So there's already some tone being added to the processing, and the more we bring up that input gain, the more we will get from that. So let's start playing with that first. Can tell right away how much those brasses got completely out of control in that high mid range around 4K, 5K, or 2K. It's a little bit too much for me. I'm going to dial it back up, but that's one way of testing the plugin and actually seeing how much of that distortion and that color change is doing to it. Now in the middle section, we have, instead of just having one control for compression, we have actually three separate bands. So we have a low band, a mid band, and a high band. You can change the individual levels, and you can also add different compressions. So the more you add compression, just as in the other videos, we explored how much the compression parameters changed when you're dialing more of that signal into each individual band, the threshold will be affected and the ratio will be affected. So It can feel like cheating, but at the same time, I recommend that you're guided by your ears as you're manipulating each of these individual processes. So the bands can be linked or unlinked. It's up to you as you're exploring the plugin. So as I was dialing up the compression level and I began seeing this golden yellow light in the indicator in here as it illuminates, meaning that the compression is acting on the signal, I started hearing this musical pumping of the signal, which I quite enjoy. Maybe not so much, but it's working really well. Now, because I'm moving all three bands together, you can tell that not all bands are acting out the same, but that is again because you have the possibility, if you want more or less, then you can unlink the bands and see what it does. Really like how it is quite impressive how much when you start bringing that high compressor up, like all the cymbals and the different small percussive elements sort of shine through the sides, like it becomes super wide. It's technically a compressor, but because it's so smart, it's actually making your mix feel a lot more wide and a lot more airy. Then again, it was a little bit too much. That's why I dialed it back. Also in the mid-level, it's really controlling and letting all of that play that is happening between like the piano and the vocals. It's really controlling it in there. And I just used the mid-level to sort of balance out and compensate for how much compression I was dialing up. And then finally, the low compressor, I don't know if you've noticed, but the kick feels a lot more present in that attack range, but it was getting a little bit out of control. That's why I brought the level down. So let's go ahead and again, bypass and see what it does. It's like basically it's sort of gluing everything together, and the way I have an option to attack or calibrate the individual bands works well because I'm having now the kick feels up there, it's controlled, it's very well rounded in the upper range, but there's also a lot of grooviness happening with the mid and high percussion on the sides, and it's making my mix feel a lot more wide. I am feeling though that I need to have a little bit more of a sub content information happening, so thankfully I have the sub boost, the same as I have an air boost in case I wanted to see what happens. This is the top high end. Again, it's not a linear EQ or a linear shelf up and down, but you can sort of think about it that way. So a little bit took me a long way On the sub boost, as I was increasing that level, I felt like all of a sudden the bass was getting out of control. It was covering a lot of the kick drum, so I brought it down to a point where like I'm having that sub presence on like 45, 50K, but at the same time, it's not focused on a specific frequency, but it's affecting a big band. I just got to make sure that while I'm increasing that level, all the elements are in the right spot. The same thing happened with the air boost. I noticed something that I hadn't noticed before. While I was increasing that air boost, all of a sudden the piano keys started coming out, which I'm like, this is great. But at the same time, there was a lot of that clinkiness happening with the small percussion towards the side. And then the vocal was getting a lot of artifacts in there. So it was a little bit too much, so I dial it back. Last but not least, I'm going to play again with the in and out levels just to see how much of that tonal balance I am getting. And that will be it. A little bit of a trick in here when you're obviously setting a compressor after you have worked on your individual elements of the mix. Just go ahead and select the busiest part of it, because that's where you're going to have a lot of those summing in different frequency band ranges, and obviously it's the more dynamic range and the more boost you're getting into that compressor, then naturally the softer parts will work better. And that's exactly what happened in here. I was a little bit afraid of just let it roll, but it worked amazingly well. You can feel how that brass section, which is driving the compressor a lot, it feels balanced. It is up there because that's how I'm trying to get some excitement happening in that section, because it's going to dial back down into this very smooth jazz, sexy section in there. But then that other more easy and slow section, it's also out there. All the elements feel well balanced. The kick was not disappointing at all. It still feels very much right there. It has presence, it has body, so everything is working well, and the image is just wider. So this works really easy. All you need to use is your ears. If you haven't tried this plugin, go ahead, test it at leapwingaudio.com and download the free trial. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.